Hi guys, it is another beautiful day in paradise in the end times. Imagine that. Here in Doomsday Eco Lodge in St. Croix, Virgin Islands, we have somehow as a planet stumbled into Sunday morning, a lovely Sunday morning in the end times. I think that would make this March 8th, 2015, and so while the mainstream media's attention is riveted on the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, your old Doomsday Preacher is going to look at it's not an anniversary, the ongoing Sunday, Bloody Sunday in the rest of this planet. Here on the alternative media, I want to thank my buddy Brother Pookaloo for sending me this. You know, I try to bring you on Sunday read from my latest Bible of the Apocalypse, but I'm kind of short on those here. So Brother Pookaloo has sent me this essay from The Ecologist, which has been setting the environmental agenda since 1970. And this is my old Humpty Dumpty Tribe hero, Derrick Jensen's latest essay from a couple of days ago. I'm kind of concerned about Derrick. I know that his health isn't very good. We haven't heard much from Derrick the past year, but he sounded like the same old doomsday prophet here. In this essay, I'm going to put the link on this essay, guys, and I highly encourage you just to click on the link and read this yourself. But if you just want to sit around and let this dumb doomsday preacher read it for you, I'll be glad to do that. I'm reading this note, Ecologist Cookies. Using this website means you agree to us using simple cookies. Okay, so the folks setting the environmental agenda since 1970 are feeding me some simple cookies. So I will share this simple cookie with you from Derrick Jensen, Confronting Industrialism. If you can't clean it up, don't make it. Modern industrial capitalism is based on one simple premise, writes Derrick Jensen. Our Mother Earth is a great store of raw materials for us to pillage and a vast trash can for our endless volume of waste, no matter how long-lived and deadly. How can this be changed? First, we must regain our own sanity. So this is essentially Derrick once again, as he's been doing for years, preaching to the choir like I'm doing now, is talking about the utter, literal insanity of the global industrial machine taking down this planet, the global industrial capitalist economy taking down a planet that it literally meets the definition of being insane. Collectively, this planet has gone insane. And so take it away, Brother Derrick. I'm not sure I'll have a chance to read all of this, but when I don't get to, you can go on the link and read yourself. All right, take it away, Brother Derrick. Some of the most important questions confronting us are, what should we do about this culture's industrial waste, from greenhouse gases to pesticides to ocean microplastics? Can the capitalists clean up the messes they create, or is the whole industrial system beyond reform? The answers become clear with a little context. Let's start the discussion of context with two riddles that aren't very funny. First, what do you get when you cross a long drug habit, a quick temper, and a gun? Answer, 2 life terms for murder with earliest release date of 2026. Question number 2, what do you get when you cross a large corporation, 2 nation states, 40 tons of poison, and at least 8,000 dead human beings? Answer, retirement with full pay and benefits. He's talking about Warren Anderson, CEO of Union Carbide, about the Bhopal blow up a few years ago. The point of these riddles is not merely that when it comes to murder and many other atrocities, different rules apply to the poor than to the rich, and it's not merely that economic production is a get-out-of-jail-free card for whatever atrocities the producers commit, whether it is genocide, gynocide, ecocide, slaving, mass murder, mass poisoning, and so on. The point here, the bigger point here, is that this culture is clearly not particularly interested in cleaning up its toxic messes, obviously, or it would not keep making them. It would not allow those who make these messes to do so with impunity. It certainly would not socially reward those who make them. This may or may not be the appropriate time to mention that this culture has created, for example, 14 quadrillion lethal doses of plutonium-239, which has a half-life of over 24,000 years, which means that in a mere 100,000 years, that number will be all the way down to 3.5 quadrillion lethal doses. And socially reward these planet eaters, obviously, and socially reward the planet eaters it does. I could have used a whole host of examples other than Warren Anderson, who is playing on the back nine long after he should have been hanging by the neck. He was sentenced to death in absentia, but the U.S. refused to extradite him. Then there's Tony Hayward, who oversaw BP's devastation of the Gulf of Mexico, who was punished for this with a severance package worth well over $30 million. Anyway, then he does some more riddles here, and we could talk about frackers who make money as they poison groundwater. We could talk about anyone associated with Monsanto. You can add your own examples. I could say you can choose your poison, but of course you can't. Those are chosen for you by those doing the poisoning. Okay, I keep thinking about one of the most fundamentally sound and fundamentally disregarded statements I have ever read. After Bhopal, one of the doctors trying to help survivors stated that corporations, and by extension all organizations and individuals, quote, should not be permitted to make poison for which there is no antidote. Isn't that something we are all supposed to learn by the time we were 3? Isn't it one of the first lessons our parents are supposed to teach us? Don't make a mess you can't clean up. Yet that is precisely the foundational motivator of this culture. Sure, we can use fancy phrases to describe the processes of creating messes we have no intention of cleaning up. and in many cases cannot clean up. And so we get phrases like developing natural resources, or one of my particular favorites, sustainable development, or technological progress, such as the invention and production of plastics, the bathing of the world in endocrine disruptors, and so on, or mining, or agriculture, or the green revolution, another one of my favorites, or fueling growth. How about creating jobs, building empire, or, of course, one of my all-time favorites, global trade. But physical reality is always more important than what we call it or how we rationalize it. And the truth is that this culture has been based from the beginning to the present on privatizing benefits and externalizing cost. In other words, on exploiting others and leaving messes behind. Hell, they call them limited liability corporations because a primary purpose is to limit the legal and financial liability of those who benefit from the actions of corporations for the harm their actions cause. This is no way to run a childhood, and it's an even worse way to run a culture. It is killing the planet. Part of the problem is that most of us are insane, having been made so by this culture. We should never forget what R.D. Laing wrote about this insanity. This is quoting his old buddy R.D. Laing, who I need to read more of, I guess. Quote, "In order to rationalize our industrial military complex, we have to destroy our capacity to see clearly any more what is in front of us and to imagine what is beyond our noses. Long before a thermonuclear war can come about, we have had to lay waste to our own sanity. We begin with the children. It is imperative to catch them in time. Without the most thorough and rapid brainwashing, their dirty minds would see through our dirty tricks. Children are not yet fools, but we shall turn them into imbeciles like ourselves, with high IQs, if possible." Close quote. We have seen this too many times. If you ask any reasonably intelligent 7-year-old how to stop global warming caused in great measure by the burning of oil and gas and by the destruction of forests and prairies and wetlands, the child might well say, "Stop burning oil and gas and stop destroying forests and prairies and wetlands." If you ask a reasonably intelligent 30-year-old who works for a green high-tech industry, you will probably get an answer that primarily helps the industry that pays his or her salary. Part of the brainwashing process of turning us into imbeciles consists of getting us to identify more closely with and care more about the fate of this culture rather than the real physical world. We're taught that the economy is the real world, and the real world is merely a place from which to steal and on which to dump externalities. Most of us internalize this lesson so completely that it becomes entirely transparent to us. Even most environmentalists internalize this. What do most mainstream solutions to global warming have in common? They all take industrialism as a given and the natural world as having to conform to industrialism. They all take empire as a given. They all take overshoot as a given. All of this is literally insane in terms of being out of touch with physical reality. The real world must always be more important than our social systems, in part because without a real world, you cannot have any social system whatsoever. It is embarrassing for me to have to write this. Upton Sinclair famously said that it is hard to make a man understand something when his job depends on him not understanding it. I would add that it's hard to make people understand something when the benefits they accrue through their exploitative and destructive way of life depend on it. So we suddenly get really stupid about the waste products produced by this culture. When people ask, how can we stop polluting the oceans with plastic, they don't really mean, how can we stop polluting the oceans with plastic? They mean, how can we stop polluting the oceans with plastic and still have this way of life? And when they ask how we can stop global warming, they really mean, how can we stop global warming without stopping our level of energy usage? When they ask, how can we have clean groundwater, they really mean, how can we have clean groundwater while we continue to use and spread all over the environment thousands of useful but toxic chemicals that end up in the groundwater? The answer to all of these is you can't. And then he goes into a long parallel of comparing this culture to a team of emergency medical technicians putting bandages on a person who is being assaulted by a knife-wielding psychopath, which is pretty much a description of the mainstream environmental movement. There is no point in trying to put little band-aids on what the global industrial machine is doing to this planet when we don't stop the global industrial machine. Even these little limp-dick mainstream environmentalists are as insane as the rest of them. And my guess is most mainstream environmentalists have no use for Derrick Jensen and his ilk. Okay, jumping down to the bottom of his sermon, and to wrap up this sermon, what do we do about this culture's fabrication of industrial waste? The first step is to stop their production. And of course, he doesn't talk about refusing to buy their products. That's nowhere anyway, but that's my own rant. The first step is to stop their production. Actually, the first step is that we regain our sanity. That is, we transfer our loyalty away from the psychopaths. This is what Ayn Rand would call stop buying their products, and toward the victim, toward, in this case, the planet that is our only home. Once we do that, everything else is technical. How do we stop them? We stop them. There you go. How do we stop them? We stop them. Thank you, Brother Derrick, for clearing that up. Although, as I say, Ayn Rand had it figured out in 1957, we stop buying their products is step number one in stopping them. Anywho, guys, I am winding down my time here in paradise. I'm out of here the day after tomorrow, so I better get out and enjoy my final few days in Doomsday Eco Lodge. Bye, guys.